My story is a bit of started, I guess, longer ago and evolved, um, which is how I'm ever evolving. In 2017, I found myself very stressed on a job. I finally landed a job at a agency I dreamed and hoped for, like, since getting before getting my degree. Um, but I was treated as if, even though I'm very making a lot of results, I didn't have the credibility because I didn't have the letters. So I worked extra hard and didn't take care of myself. Um, but I was growing in my spirituality and didn't recognize it. So I putting a lot of effort and heart into helping others, which was I was helping people at a mental health agency. Um, I was in the school system with the youth. It evolved into not having clients, and I began to work with adults and youth. Well, having a history of mental health myself, I found myself so stressed and working to. I was sitting at my desk trying to catch up on a lot of paperwork and talking, thinking I was talking, but no one hearing me. And started feeling weak. And I kept saying, I'm taking a break, I'm taking a break. 6 hours later, I'm taking a break, I'm taking a break. Finally, I went to take a lunch break at 5 o'clock. I hadn't eaten all day. And I went home and pulled in my drive and stopped. I did not get all the way up to my carport. I felt like I was having a stroke, even though I didn't know what a stroke was, and I thought maybe it was an aneurysm and my head was just thumping. Fast forward through calling all of my family and eventually going back to work, I could not speak well. I started to have aphasia, which it wasn't the first time I'd had it, like back in 2009. And I didn't clue into any signals. Being a person that worked in that field, I had no clue what was going on. I'm like writing it off to everything. Um, but well, I didn't say I had no clue. I had an inkling, but I like no, everything's fine, as I always do. And all my family's out of town, like states away. And my friend takes me to the hospital. And I didn't know in between the time my family and her are conversing about me, but I didn't know what they were saying. So I get to one hospital and they said, decide to take me to another, and all my family decides to meet up because they had said they thought that I was having a mental breakdown. I get to the hospital and I'm fine. I'm extremely tired because I hadn't slept in about 3, 5, maybe it consists of 5 days. I had like 30 minutes every other day of sleep. And I get there and things unfold to worse. And needless to say, there's a lot of hallucinating and delusions. And but the real aha moment happened in the hospital, related to right before going to the hospital. The night before all of this happened, I had this really close spiritual connection with God that I felt like I was really having a nice little conversation. And all of a sudden, I understood everything. And if all the dots connected. And I remember having the conversation and saying to God, I'm not ready to go yet. Because I feel if I know everything, I got it together, my purpose is up. Time is up. And I made a statement and said, no, I don't know what you got planned, but I want to be a part of it. No matter what, can I please help? As I'm in the hospital a day later, going in and out, I realize and I say, this is what I asked for. I had experienced up until that point all different kind of mental symptoms. I had worked with all the different people, but never have I known what it was like to hear voices, to see things that to everybody else is not there until that day. And it was the most terrifying thing ever. But I knew I was okay because it was just something I was going through. And the thing is, I had support. And I remember crying, saying, what about the people who don't have people? And in the midst of so-called losing my mind, the real Mary came out. And I told the nurse, who was terrified of me, and she was this new girl. Um, it's funny to me, but not to her. And she's like telling me to get undressed and saying, put it in this paper sack, and it's a plastic bag. And she's shaking, and I said, it's okay. And she looked at me crazy. I said, you're new, aren't you? And she says, I said, it's okay. I'm not normally like this. And what I'm going to tell you now is that it's something that'll probably shock you and make you think I'm crazier. But I understand that you're new and you're probably terrified as shit. And I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt anybody in here. If anything, I hurt myself from jumping all over the place. It's going to be okay. And my sister said to her, oh, this is the real Mary, the normal her. She has this gift, and that's how she is. She's not crazy. I took that with me. And as I got better, and of course, they put me in this little crazy house, I call it, where what it did for me was stop me from being busy and helping everybody else. And I had to take time for myself. I experienced a lot of anxiety from not being around my close support system. And then eventually, like, overtook the hospital and began to be coaching everybody there. So when I came home, I always prayed every day, but I decided that I would not pray because I was confused on spirits and everything that I was talking to. And I'm not going to tap into and use my gift and do any of that for days, for weeks. And then finally, I couldn't take it anymore. And after they finally changed medicines where I could dream again, I said, I'm back. And it took me about a couple more years I made the decision to say, and losing a job, that I'm going to be a life coach. This is what I was meant to be. This is my purpose. I have a mission to tell my story of the different things I went through, and I can help people. And I'm going to stop running from that. So I made that commitment back in 2019, and it's been elevation after elevation after elevation ever since. And I don't have any problems with any of so-called mental health issues anymore, or a lot of the different things that I was having, besides me purposely overeating or something like that. Um, so I decided that I'm going to live my life in exuberance.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Mary, I'm present right now. We're going to go to Fari in just a bit here, but if Fari would like to share, I'm present right now that before you came on, I shared that I would put up this figure here just to let people know, like, oh, we have 5 minutes. We're like use this to wrap up. I'm not necessarily sure if you were there towards that, so it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to cut off, but it was I did want to make sure that that I was honoring that part there. So. I'm like, I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect here. And I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to make sure we also leave space here. Are you complete right now with what you had to share? Thank you, then, Mary. All right, we'll have space for you here. And we'll continue. And then afterwards, we'll just close out this space.
Yeah, I'm happy to let Mary go on if she likes to go on, if she needs to speak more. So I can always do some other sessions. And I feel like Mary needs to vent that and say it. And it's really good for her to say it, because I spoke to her before, and it's wonderful to see her actually talking. Mhm. So I'm happy to give the time to Mary.
Mary, how
Mary, would you like to continue, love?
I'll continue. I only have one more part to that, which is last year, before losing my brother and before getting to the TE group, I wasn't writing. I'm a very creative, and throughout all the different issues that I've had in life, I've always written. It was an escape for me. I thought it was me getting my freedom, but I realized I was just escaping. And I stopped writing for a very long time. Well, not as long as before, because years before I stopped for years. But I stopped for several months, and I felt like this writer block where I couldn't write until I sat down and I was determined to write. And I started writing, and I just sat there and said, okay, here goes. And I thought that I was writing to myself or writing about writing. And I came up with this piece that I later titled Origin, which brought me to the best exuberance that I have now. And I got the name Exuberance and for my business by a default. That's not the original name I chose, but they said it was too close to another name. So it ended up really being the perfect name. But as I was writing my piece about Origin that talks about how I started to experience some of the best times in my life after so much struggle and pain, and I was like the happiest ever. And but yet I felt lost. And as I kept writing, I realized that I missed the very thing that got me where I was and that kept me all the time, which was my writing. So I thought that's what I was writing about. And then I realized towards the end that my writing was really me I was talking about, that I had lost sight of myself throughout trying to help a lot of people and help them not go through as much as what I went through or extend a hand before things get worse. I realized that where was I in all of it? And what made me really realize was when my brother passed away and he got murdered in October of last year. And he always never let me make excuses for anything. He never let me wallow in anything. And I was the one person I was always my true self with. And I didn't realize it until he was gone. And when I thought about it, going through my grief, and I went back to my piece, the written piece, I realized that, hey, I didn't have my piece of self. And I really lost myself in the midst of trying to save the whole world. And I was the one that needed to be saving. So once I realized that and started to work on Mary, um, things got better. And I began to be more of that fearless person and fearless coach and step into my power and not just be a cheerleader for people, but really share my story, realize what I've actually lived, and don't stop giving a damn about what everybody else thinks about my story. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. It's the World Joy Movement. Yeah. What was your greatest insight from this conversation? And if you want to come and be a part of a conversation like this live, it's really simple. Just go to beworldjoy.com and come introduce yourself and let's take the conversation to the next level because you're there now. All right, let's play.